were 7 faults noticed while the client was doing the squat. The first one that we noticed was a slight knee varus of the left knee, which was caving out during the down portion. While going down, the client also shifted weight to the left. The knees were a little bit over the toes. Their arms were coming a little bit forward, so not in line in the ear area where we originally had them start at. The left foot supinated while the right pronated. And then on the posterior view, there was a slight hip hike on the right hip.
Here are some hypotheses for the faults listed above. The main ones I want to focus on are the weak adductors, which would make sense if my knees are caving outwards. The abductors are more overactive in this case. And for the weak left glute medius, this would make sense. Due to the right hip hike, my body would be leaning on my left side, which would compensate for having the weak left glute medius. To test our hypothesis for overactive abductors, we would use the Ober test. The Ober test is important for identifying tightness or shortening in the hip abductors. When these structures are overactive, they restrict hip adduction, which can affect the overall movement. So for my case, my knees were caving out, so this would make sense for the abductors being too short.
Our air hypothesis 2 is a right hip hike. As you can see, when the client goes down into the lowered squat, his right hip is up, his left hip is down. We believe that this is due to a weak glute medius. A glute medius is used to stabilize during the squat, so if it is weakened, then it's not going to be doing its job, which leads to a dipped left on his hip. So that's why his hip is why we believe it's lowered slightly. As we mentioned previously before, client also experiences a left weight shift, and we think this is to compensate any sort of weakness within the hip. How we are going to test this is through a side lying abduction test. So what happens is that the client lays on their side and they have either a resistance band or the practitioner's hand using manual resistance. In this case, we used a manual resistance. And they push down medial to the client but inferior to the room. And usually the practitioner can assess both sides of both hips and see which one, if there's a deficit, if there's a muscle imbalance, or if one is significantly weaker than the other one.
These were the exercises we chose for the weak hip adductors and to fix the right hip hike. So we chose a banded adduction. I attached a cable to my pull-up bar and adducted my leg. That will work the adductors. And we also had a banded walk.